Hello, everyone. This is Clay Chase with Torrey Hills Capital. I'd like to welcome you to the Element 29 Resources virtual presentation for May 22nd, 2025. I trust and hope you're all well, getting ready for a great summer. Now, as always, we have a very interesting and timely presentation for you today with a company that we feel is particularly well positioned to benefit from what we and many others in the market expect will be a prolonged upward trend for copper pricing. At this time, copper is priced at roughly $4.50 per pound. It's also important to note here that many of the analysts that cover copper are predicting even higher prices in the near to midterm future as the world moves towards a more electrified transportation economy. Okay, let's get started. Element 29 is a resource, or actually, Element 29 Resources is a copper explorer with primary operations in Peru. The company's two primary prospects are their flagship Elida project in central Peru and their Flor de Cobre project. That's more in the southern part of the country, in the heart of the southern Peru copper belt. In today's program, we're really going to focus on the company's more advanced Elida project, where the company recently announced a series of extremely material drill holes, including an amazing 1,040-meter hole that came in at 0.54 copper equivalent. That's very, very significant. Element 29 trades on the TSX Venture, ticker is ECU. On the OTCQB, the ticker is EMTRF. Currently, Element 29 trades at around 40 cents per share in the US, gives it a market cap around 50 million US dollars. With us today to discuss Element 29's operations is the company's president and CEO, Mr. Richard Osmond. Hi, Richard. How are you today?
Hi, Clay. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Thanks. Appreciate
Great.
the opportunity to speak.
Well, fantastic. We're really happy to have you on the program today, and we're looking forward to getting more information about what's happening over there at Illida right now. Okay, to start things off, can you tell us a bit about the current overall copper market in your opinion, and more specifically, what you're seeing in the market at this time with some of the majors that might be looking to shore up some of their project inventory going forward here?
Yeah, those are good questions. Certainly, I was just looking at a news release article in the last couple of days, actually, where the CEO of BHP had come out, Mike Henry, and said that the world will basically consume a million tons of additional million tons of copper annually for the next 15 years. So he's predicting like 40 million tons of copper being consumed by 2040 and then 50 million tons by 2050. That's
Wow.
pretty exciting, right? Right now we're basically consuming about 26 to 27 million tons. So we're looking to like double the amount of copper being consumed over the next 25 years.
For
Incredible.
the current industry, can they support that kind of demand growth with the projects that are in production now? I mean, obviously not. And what are they planning to do to meet that kind of demand, do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be challenging to keep at that pace. Certainly, all of the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, from a copper discovery perspective, are pretty much made. Like all of these big porphyry copper systems that were discovered back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s throughout the Andes in like world-class jurisdictions that were stable, like Chile, Peru, those are pretty much almost mined out. So now they're looking to go underground on a lot of these deposits. And what happens when you do that is you go from like 250,000 ton operation per day to about 100 to 150. So basically your amount of production is at least a third to a half of what it was before. So you need obviously higher grade copper or higher price copper to make that work. And then a lot of these companies are going into these really high risk jurisdictions. There's been a fair bit of M&A activity over the last couple of years as well, strategic investments to shore up copper assets by the majors and mid tiers. And, Barrick are looking to go into Pakistan with partnering with Saudi Arabia the Saudi Arabian funds, and essentially, I guess the Saudis are planning to put like $9 billion into developing a porphyry copper project called Reko Diq in the sort of the tribal regions of Pakistan, which pretty high risk place to be exploring and
Sure.
developing mines.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I hear a lot of other projects like in places like the DRC, in places like that that are like embroiled in some pretty difficult geopolitical situations right now, to put it lightly. So that in light of that, that sounds to me like that when you have a when you if you're able to find a project in a relatively stable jurisdiction, that those are going to have some real value. Would you believe that's a true statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can find, sort of like tier one copper assets in a world class jurisdictions that have like stability agreements in place, free trade agreements, things like that, you can get mines permitted. Then that's the places where the major mining companies want to be focused. Obviously, it makes it easier for them to get the capital they need to develop these projects.
Sure, it makes total sense. That kind of segs into my next question. Let's talk a bit about the company's focused and why Peru. I think you just gave some of those reasons right there, but let's hear more about that.
Yeah, Peru's again a world-class mining jurisdiction. A lot of work's been done in Peru to explore and develop mines, although it hasn't seen the same level of exploration as, say, somewhere like Chile. Peru did have some political instability back in the 80s and early 90s that they've sort of worked through, and now, I mean, Peru has become one of the cheapest, more stable mining jurisdictions to explore and develop mines, especially these large copper mines. Uh, you know, Anglo recently developed the Quellaveco mine in southern Peru that went into production about 2 years ago. A multi-billion-dollar investment. Then Teck just got their Zafranal deposit permitted to develop, so they're going to start developing that soon, I think. So, mines are still actively being developed in Peru. And what's really neat is like Peru has these agreements in place, like free trade agreements with Canada and the US, so you can,
Hmm.
money moves freely, no double taxation. Peru also has a is part of APEC, so there's like some stability agreements associated with that, trade agreements, as well as they have investment treaties with countries like Canada and the U.S., where investment is protected. So if the government decide to take the project away from you, then you have recourse to take the government to international arbitration, so it gets tried outside of country.
Sounds great.
Jurisdictions, yeah, where you don't have that in jurisdictions, you really risk losing everything. And this is a big deal when you're looking to put like billions of dollars into developing one of these large scale operations.
Question. So based on that, let's talk about your kind of flagship project that's in Peru. Obviously, it's the Elida property. How'd you find that project, and what led you to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we started a private royalty slash project generator back in probably about 2010, and we spent about 8 years exploring for porphyry copper deposits projects in Peru. We looked at globally, where would be the best place to explore. The most important thing about finding discoveries is being in the right geology. Obviously, Peru had the right geology. It's the second largest copper producer in the world, um, but it had been underexplored because of the some of the political issues that have been happening. So it was a really obvious place to go. Chile becomes very expensive to hold ground, makes it more risky to explore for early stage projects. Whereas Peru is a place that you can go in $3 a hectare to acquire ground, and you can hold it for 10 years without having to worry about penalties and things like that. So, we went into Peru. We selected it as a key place to explore. I had basically acquired all of the remote sensing data for the Andes of Peru, and I processed that data, and we came up with about 1,000 anomalies, and within that we had like top 40 high priority targets. And Elida became like the second project we visited, and we essentially walked in and stake the ground, and that was the beginning of the discovery. The project was then optioned to Lundin Mining, and Lundin had done about 9,800 meters of drilling on the project. And then back in 2016-17, the price of copper went to $2 a pound. They sort of shut down worldwide exploration, so they gave the project back to Element 29, or sorry, to Globetrotters in 2017, and then we put it into Element 29 in 2018 and listed the company in late 2020.
Right. So that's kind of the macro look at Peru and why it's a good place, good jurisdiction to find a big copper discovery. Let's talk a bit about the micro environment around Illida. What makes it special in terms of, finding something? What are some of the key value drivers of this specific location and why you're excited about what you found there, why you found it there?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, really. I mean, this deposit should have been found, maybe 20 years ago. It goes to really show you the exploration potential improves still. But this project sits about 100 kilometers south of Antamina, which is like the seventh largest copper mine in the world. Antamina sits at over 4,000 meters elevation, close to 4,500, and very remote part of the country. And Elida actually sits much closer to the coast. You can basically drive to the project 200 kilometers north of Lima. So you drive the Pan American Highway to a port city called Barranca. In that process, you drive by one of the largest ports in the world. It's going to be at least the Chancay megaport, which is going to be moving materials from all over South America to Asia. And and then you're about 75 kilometers in from the coast, and the elevation of the project is like 1,700 meters, and we're actually closer to the Antamina port than what they are, and we can actually drive to it. So really good infrastructure. At the same time, the project has a hydroelectric power plant about 15 kilometers away from the project, which would produce clean energy to be able to operate the mine potentially, and also, lots of good infrastructure for mine development. We have access to water, complete infrastructure, workforce, port access. So all these things are really important when you're looking to, explore for and try and develop strategic projects.
I think a lot of people miss that when they look at copper, they just look at maybe the size and the grade, but almost as important sometimes when you look at these projects is, what is the access like? How easy is it to get in there and build the mine? And then how easy is it to move the concentrate or the ore, whatever, to a port to get to a refinery? And such a huge premium for projects like Illida that have all of those natural value drivers already in place. You don't have to build a large, electrical line to, 200 kilometers to where you're going, or a road or helicopter everybody in to explore. So, I mean, that's a really key point to for Illida, that a lot of the projects that don't have that are up in the middle of nowhere, 500 kilometers from a road in BC or places like that. So that's really an important thing to note here. Um, so you've had Illida, you've been working on it for a couple years now. I think you put out an initial resource in 2020, late 2022. What have you tell us briefly what you've been able to accomplish so far to date and why you're excited about where you're headed with the project?
Yeah, we got the project back from Lundin, and it was in pretty good shape. They had completed almost 10,000 meters of drilling. We put that resource model out after doing another 4,500 meters of drilling, really early stage. Like generally speaking, you wouldn't want to put a resource model out until at least you got 30,000 meters of drilling done on the project. We've done two more campaigns of drilling. We continue to add, high grade mineralization to the system, and we are continuing to basically potentially expand that resource base, and that's really our objective. And we're going to continue to work towards that goal. What we'd like to do is be able to build Elida, or at least show the potential to build Elida into a tier one copper discovery, and I think we're on track to do that.
Okay, so this most recent drill program that you've announced here about a month and a half, 2 months ago, tell us about that and what you believe the significant. In fact, you know what, we should maybe move over to your presentation if you wanted to show us a couple of the slides that we can kind of see what this resource footprint looks like. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you want to put up your presentation, that would be great. Great, fantastic. So is this a picture of Ilida right here?
No, this is a picture of our Fort Cobre
That's
project.
Florida Cobra. Okay, great.
Yeah, so we essentially when we spun out Element 29 from Globetrotters, we put three other projects into the portfolio that we believe also have potential for tier one discoveries. You can see the alteration in the mountains around this
Sure.
project. Yeah, and this project sits like just 26 kilometers to the southeast of Cerro Verde, right, which is the third largest copper mine in the world. It's in a world-class mining jurisdiction, and we just got the approvals to the government approvals, essentially environmental permits to start drilling this project. So we're going to hopefully try and get into and do some work on this project to maybe hopefully that later this year. But that's really hard to do for us because we're every time we drill a hole at Elida, we continue to add tons. So
Yeah, that's the focus right now. That's
absolutely.
kind of the focus of this presentation is your Elida project. So,
Yeah, so we always make forward-looking statements in this presentation. So which we don't think are unreasonable, but should not be unduly relied upon. You have to do your own due diligence, obviously. Um, as mentioned, we're copper focused, and we also get molybdenum moly as a byproduct, and both are considered critical minerals in Canada and the U.S. and I think in Europe. We're also in a proven jurisdiction, as mentioned, Peru, second largest copper producer in the world, and we already have tons on the books, and we're just trying to expand those, make them low-hanging fruit. Again, you can see the location of our projects on this map of Peru, Elida sitting 100 kilometers south of Antamina, 200 kilometers north of Lima, and then our Florida Cobre project sitting about 26 kilometers southeast of Cerro Verde. And then we
great.
have two other projects along the coast that are a little bit earlier stage. Yeah, so that's what our Elida project looks like, pretty much in the Atacama Desert on the western side of the Andes. So very little in the way of agriculture, cattle or any kind of
Farming.
ranching, farming,
Right.
exactly. So the community that we deal with, the host community, is about 10 kilometers away in a separate valley. So, you can sort of see the road access down the valley. So it has everything you need to be able to develop a low cost operation. You can see that again in this diagram where we have, Lima sitting 200 kilometers south. You can drive the Pan American Highway to the port city of Barranca and then 75, 80 kilometers into the coast. And we usually stay in a community here called Kawa, which also is a community where the hydroelectric station is set up. So, we're only 15 kilometers away from the project at that point. The Antamina mine sitting further to the north here, they actually produce a slurry concentrate and they pipe it to the south and then out to their port here on the coast. We can actually drive to their port in about 150 kilometers, so about 2 hours
Wow.
drive maximum. Yeah, so very well developed.
Short
It's set
haul.
up for, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so as mentioned, we put together an initial resource model. You can see that on the right. Basically resources at a 0.2 cutoff. We laid out about 322 million tons of 0.32 copper, 0.03 molybdenum, 2.61 grams per ton silver at a 0.2 cutoff, and that was based on 14.36 thousand meters of drilling.
Mhm.
Really little, really very little drilling, very little deep drilling. Um, and that you can see the sort of the transparent overlay of topography. So you can see basically the mineralization outcrops on surface. And you can also see in the middle of the pit, which you can see outlined here, you have essentially about 143 million tons of 0.41 copper, and within that about 60 million tons of 0.5. So, good potential for a shallow, high-grade starter pit. We're looking to expand that high-grade mineralization. We're also looking to expand the pit. The pit right now has a 0.74 to 1 strip ratio. What that means is you're only moving about 3/4 of a ton of waste for every ton of ore that you put into the mill.
Yeah,
That
that's really key, that low strip ratio. Um, a lot of these projects right now have a much higher strip ratio than yours, and that's going to be very expensive to put into production, I imagine, right?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's not uncommon to see like a 2 to 3 to 1 strip ratio. So right now we've got a lot of flexibility to be able to expand that pit
Sure.
and take in more ore for sure. Yeah.
So you
Um,
these
okay.
last two these drill holes that you just recently announced, those are not in this picture, right? There they are. Tell us about those and what the impact of that could be that you drilled deeper and really saw some great mineralization.
Yeah, these holes were 2 holes from a 6-hole program that we managed to complete really late last year. I think it was December 20th when we finally pulled the drills off the holes for logistical reasons. I was getting into the Christmas holidays. Hole 33 is now the deepest hole drilled at Elidan. It went to about 1,109 meters depth, 1,110, and it had about 1,040 meters of 0.54 copper equivalent grades. So you're essentially looking at over 1,000 meters vertical of at least zero point 0.4 copper and some really good moly credits as well, like 0.036 moly and about 3 grams per ton silver that hole. But what's really interesting is the lower part of that hole, the last 310 meters. You can see in the bottom part of this hole
Sure.
that ran 310.1 meters of 0.71, and we shut the hole down in higher grade mineralization, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, it's incredible. We think we see some what I would say uh, copper zonation, where you're starting to see more chalcopyrite, which is a copper mineral, to pyrite, which means the copper to iron ratio, I would say, is sort of increasing. So we expect to see that zonation continue, and we're still into it, and we're hoping to see even higher grades as we go deeper. But that's sort of just based on the zonation that we see in the mineralization in the hole. So that's pretty exciting. We're actually thinking of going in and potentially extending that hole deeper just to see if we can hit that higher grade mineralization.
So a quick question here, Richard. If now you did this 321 million ton resource estimate before a lot of these deeper holes were put into the project area. If you're, I mean, would it be safe to assume that if you ran a new 43101 resource estimate that to incorporate some of these deeper drill holes, I mean, maybe you have to, make some more closer spacing or more drill holes. Could we assume that your resources could go up materially?
Yeah, I think so. I think we will be able to expand that pit. We have more work to do. You'll see in maybe the next couple of slides what we're
Yeah,
planning to do. There really hasn't been a lot of drilling in the southern part of the target area, or the zone 1, where we have the resource outlined. So we have a lot of work left to do before we look at trying to put together another resource model.
understood.
So yeah, so we'll definitely improve it and hopefully increase the grade as well. So that was really the
Right.
objective of this program, was to try and lay out holes with inside the pit that would, potentially increase the overall grades, get it up from 0.32 up closer to zero point 0.4, and then at the same time allow those holes to extend beyond the pit to show that we can expand the mineralization outside the existing pit shell down to depths of 1 kilometer or even more if the copper grades continue to improve as we go deeper.
Great. You just announced a large scale MT survey. Let's talk about that a bit. Maybe look at the plan. There's the plan view. Tell us about that and what do you hope to find with that survey?
Yeah, so MT is actually becoming very, very conventional for exploring for porphyry copper systems at depth, usually depths of greater than 500 meters. The system itself is what it does is it's sort of an acronym for magnetotellurics, which essentially measures the movement of um currents through the ground. So like, the Earth compared to space is a conductor. So any kind of lightning activity in the atmosphere or solar storm activity generally produces electromagnetic energy at varying frequencies, and then what that energy does is it generates current flow in the ground, which produces secondary electromagnetic fields. And what the MT is designed to do is measure those changes. And, it can see down really deeply depending on what frequencies you use. So the longer you sit and listen, the deeper you can see into the ground. And it's really good at mapping out changes in resistivity related to geology or alteration. So what we're hoping to see is the MT sort of pick up some of the mineralization in around the pit, and also some of that deeper mineralization that we're seeing down, in hole 33 down potentially over a kilometer. And then at the same time, we'd like to sort of use that survey to try and map out the overall hydrothermal footprint of the system down within that sort of yellow dotted line that you see, which is what we call the phyllic alteration footprint of the system. And that's about 2.5 by 2.5 kilometers in scale. And we really don't know exactly where that ends. There's a lot of cover to the north, and also within the coastal batholith that we see to the west, where we have zone 4. We see that the batholith is actually altered as well. So we think there are porphyries that are actually coming into the coastal batholith that we haven't even recognized yet. So lots of room to grow, and we think that the whole system is related to like one porphyry intrusive complex coming in at depth, and you're just seeing fingers coming out from deeper down. And the results that we see, and again in hole 33, sort of suggest that you're getting to higher grade more copper rich mineralization as you go deeper. And that's really exciting. We'd like to sort of get a sense of what's happening at those depths, and I think the MT will help us with that quite a bit.
That is exciting. So more or less, this is kind of a downward looking radar, if you will, that senses the resistivity of the rock, or alternatively how chargeable it is, to finding where the rock is carries more current. And I guess that's because all these copper and silver and these are very conductive type minerals that would produce more chargeability, I assume, right?
Well, I think what happens is when the porphyries come in, they bring hydrothermal fluids that basically when they break open the host rock, the fluid density changes, so it becomes less, like the density in the ground becomes less, and then those fluids start to react with the host rock, and then that reaction produces a lot of clay and also micas. It's part of the hydrothermal alteration footprint, and also the sulfide start to precipitate at those contacts as well. So we think that the MT will hopefully map out those kind of contacts, which is where most of the porphyry mineralization usually sits, is along the upper part of the porphyry and into the host rock.
So you'll use the results of this study to guide your next drill program, or to help guide that drill program where you'll drill?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we want to follow up on some of that deeper mineralization, higher grade mineralization, we probably need something to help us target a bit better. We don't want to be just drilling blind holes initially. We want to be, you know, um, in a position where we can start to test some of these other zones of hydrothermal alteration that we know are porphyry related. We've laid out about 5 targets really, and we've really only tested zone 1 where we have the current resource.
Yeah, there's a plan view that shows these 5 different zones. Do you have that slide today?
Yeah, so there are the zones there in red within the
Oh, I see.
phyllic
Yeah, the red
alteration zone.
outlines. Yeah, there's one, two, yeah, 5 of them. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a zoom in. What this diagram also shows is where the location of holes 33 and 35 are, um, and also what we're still planning to do in the next drill program. You can see in the southern part, there's very little drilling along the southern contact. And of
Yes.
course, the hill, the topography is dropping to the south. So, we expect this to really be a key area to sort of add tons without really changing the strip ratio at all. So we're really going to push to try and get more information. We'd like to also maybe continue to drill to the east We know the mineralization continues in this area. Um, and, if we get some compelling geophysical anomalies out in here, I think it makes sense to probably drill some deeper holes into this part of the system as well. And then we have a strike length of like, maybe 800 meters, at least 500 to 600 meters of mineralization down vertically to depths of over a kilometer.
Wow, that's an impressive. When you look at this diagram, you really get a sense of, where you're at now, but where it could expand as you start testing some of these other zones to see if they might contain some of the same porphyry material, right?
Absolutely. Like if you look at zone 4, you can see the porphyries are coming in along the contact with the host volcanosedimentary sequences and the coastal batholith. Coastal batholith is altered, and I mean you get good copper oxides showing up on surface here.
Right.
It's never been drilled. I mean, it's a great host rock for porphyry mineralization. And we'd like to go in and test that. We also, I mean, target 5 is mostly under colluvial. We see the alteration in the rocks further to the north. We really think that there's potential to expand the mineralization into this area. And if we get, again, some good geophysical results in this area, it becomes compelling as a drill target.
Right. And you're gonna be drilling that in the third quarter, or some of these drill holes will get done in Q3, which is just coming up in the next month or two, right? Starting.
Yeah, so the MT is ongoing. We're about two-thirds of the way through, and we're sort of hoping to have that completed before the end of Q2, the end of June, and have the data back. It's a lot of work. You got to process that data. It covers a big area, about 5K by 6K, and to do the 3D inversions on that usually will take like almost a week of computer time on like a supercomputer to do it. But once we have those results, I think it would be really helpful, and it'll target down. I mean, the inversions will be done down to like at least 2 kilometers depth, and we'll get a really good three-dimensional picture of what's happening in the ground. And then hopefully, it'll help us fine tune the remaining part of this phase 3 program that you can see laid out there, and hopefully also potentially lay out a couple more holes that we can drill using the current drill permit.
When those results come out, or when you have the results, is that something that you'll be putting out either in a press release or showing some of that information on your website?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be well, yeah. I mean, I think it'll be worthwhile comparing the results to what we already have, and
Sure.
potentially looking at showing some other potential targets.
Now, you'd mentioned in this most recent press release that your kind of stated mission is to move Elida into a tier one discovery. Can you tell us what you consider a tier one, or what the industry considers a tier one discovery? And what impact would that have on the company if you're able to do that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the bigger this project becomes, it's harder for a junior mining company to develop it. If you're looking at a tier one discovery, it's pretty much a deposit that the major mining companies would be willing to invest the money to develop. It has a long-term life of mine,
Mhm.
multiple mining cycles. So essentially, you're looking at about 5 million tons of contained metal, copper equivalents, as sort of a minimum for tier one. And anything beyond that, I think it would be considered tier one, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So that's what your goal is, to get Illida up to that category. So based on what you've already found at Illida and some of these prospective zones, this MT survey, have you had some interest from some of these majors at this level? Try to find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. The majors, whenever any copper projects in Peru, I mean, the majors are actively exploring there, looking to evaluate
Sure.
potential projects. So yeah, I mean, that's no secret for us. I mean, we are always, have a good relationship with the majors, and we are actively getting them to sign CAs and go evaluate the project. Just
Okay.
to keep them informed on how we're doing and how things are evolving.
Right. So that kind of dovetails to my next question. What do you envision as some of the exit opportunities or strategies for Element 29 with the Elida project? I mean, you said this, if it gets to a certain size, it's not something that you guys would develop. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think because we're in Peru, a world-class mining jurisdiction, I really think that we just have to get this to become a low-hanging fruit. Something we really haven't talked about here is, it's strategically well located, but it also has got, I mean, it doesn't have any gold associated with the deposit. In a lot of cases, when you bring gold into a porphyry, it brings a lot of metallurgical complexities, where you have arsenical copper coming in, and then you have to find a way to to get the to produce a concentrate without actually bringing in all that arsenic associated with those types of that type of mineralogy. We don't see that here. We have very little in the way of arsenical copper mineralization, and we expect to produce a copper concentrate here that's very clean, and then those generally sell at a premium because you don't have to blend them, and you'll be able to blend the concentrate from a project like Elida. Potentially, we haven't done the metallurgical work yet. We're
Sure.
planning to do it later this year, but potentially you'll be able to blend it with some of these higher, more contaminated ores. So it becomes a bit of a strategic asset in that regard as well.
Yeah, so it's another premium, another positive box checked for Illida. It's kind of like the Goldilocks project. Everything you want is there, and nothing that you don't want is there. So that's kind of a perfect world for you, as long as you can bring it up to this kind of key metric, this tier one metric size. So, well, that's a great overview of Elida. We're excited to see what's going to happen next. The MT survey should be out here fairly soon, and then you're going to start the drills turning again. Um, we haven't really focused on any other projects, but just real quickly, could you tell us about your pipeline of other projects?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, Clay. We sort of have three other projects, as mentioned, that we put into Element 29. All of them have huge hydrothermal footprints, potential for tier one discoveries.
Mhm.
As mentioned, we spent about 8 years putting this portfolio together, and Element 29 pretty much had a pick of whatever copper projects it felt it needed at the time. The Florida Cobre project is probably the most interesting at the moment. It's most furthest along. It sits about 26 kilometers south of Cerro Verde, and that ground was held by Anglo for about 10 years, and they eventually dropped it back again in 2015-16 when the price of copper went to $2 a pound. We competed with five other companies, and I think we won most of the blocks. And we already knew there was an untested porphyry target there. So we've done some geophysics, and we've already got all of the environmental permits in place, which are valid for 5 years to start drilling this project
Great.
whenever we feel we have the funds to go in and do that. Yeah,
We look
very
forward to hearing
exciting.
more about that. Go ahead, and you have some other ones you want to talk briefly about as well. Sorry.
Yeah, Paca and Paway. I mean, we've just, at Paca, we just recently submitted a drill permit as well. Well, at least the environmental permit to get a DIA, which again will be valid for 5 years. And Paway is a little bit further behind, a little bit further north. But we think, for example, Paca sits along the same structural corridor as all of the Southern Peru copper deposits. You can sort of see them. Cerro Verde, third largest, less Quellaveco and Cajon. Quellaveco is owned by Anglo. Cajon and Tuquipala are owned by Southern Copper. So these are all like large, giant tier one deposits, and that Florida Cobre sits right in the middle of that jurisdiction. And Paca, we think, is the extension of that belt to the north, and it really hasn't been properly drilled and tested. So we're very excited about actually moving these projects forward in our pipeline. And they're all really close to the coast, low elevation, good access to infrastructure like ports, and just a matter of getting the funding in place to go test these things.
That's great. Well, lots to look forward to for sure. So, where else can our listeners get information about Element 29 for some, if they'd like to do some additional due diligence, get a look at this full presentation?
Yeah, I think I mean, we post a lot of our materials that we promotional materials certainly on our website. You can go there. We definitely have a lot of videos that we've done
Mhm.
over the course of the last year or so. We also post on LinkedIn and Facebook, X, you know, but certainly on our website, it would be great, you know, to sort of connect and you know, sign up for our news flow and new news information that's coming out. And yeah, so I think you know, for us, we're going to continue to be putting out news over the next over the coming months related to the geophysics and the start of the drill program. So you know, I think it'd be a good opportunity to sort of um, um, what's that called? It'll be a good opportunity really to get sort of subscribed to our newsletter.
Yeah, become part of the E29 community. So for anyone that wants to go on their website, it's www.e29, just the two and nine, copper.com. And there's a lot of good information on there as well for you to do more research on Element 29, find out a lot more about ELA. I think there's some great flyover videos of both of the major projects as well. Um, Richard, we really appreciate you coming on today. I know it's kind of you had a great result in January with that drill results. Now we're going to move into the next stage with this MT survey, followed by the phase 3 drilling program. So lots of news to look forward to going forward here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we wrap this up today?
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing those results coming out. It's going to be pretty exciting. I think we're going to we'll hopefully get some good results out of the geophysics and get that drilling started. We also have, you know, we don't really talk about it, but I mean, we're expanding our drill permitting at Elida. We're going from a FTA environmental permit to a DIA. We expect to have that in place before the end of the year. You know, probably late Q3, early Q4, and that'll allow us to drill not just the current 20 platforms, but we can double it to 40, and that'll
Wow.
give us an opportunity, yeah, to really start to go after some of these other targets, particularly. You know, if we get some really good results from the geophysics, then it'll give us a really good opportunity to be able to get some platforms in place to be able to drill some of these targets.
Well, that's great. We're looking forward to that too as well, and we'll have you back on when those geophysics get published. How's that sound?
That sounds great, Clay. I appreciate
Let's
it.
do, let's do it. Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming on today and getting a very good update and comprehensive overview of the ELIDA project from Element 29. If you have any additional questions, feel free to contact us or go on to the website. Richard, thanks again so much for coming on, and we'll look forward to talking with you real soon.
Yeah, thank you, Clay. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye for
Take
now.
care.
Cheers.